Let's talk about interfaces in Java. Interfaces are a contract that we get to define so that we could have classes that implement those interfaces have to fulfill those contracts. What do I mean? Let's get into that. So here, to continue building on the Ferrari class, we can go ahead and create an interface so that we can have this Ferrari class implement that interface. And what are some of the concepts behind the interfaces? Before we get started, well, we know that Java is single, uses single inheritance, and so multiple inheritance is not available in Java. So this is one way that we can get around this limitation of not having multiple inheritance in Java, right? So we can extend from one class, right? We can inherit from one parent class, but we cannot inherit from multiple classes. So we can inherit from one and then implement one or more interfaces, and that we don't have a limitation on. We can have more than one implementation of an interface, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So first of all, let's get started with creating a interface. So I'll right click and say, let's go ahead and look here for a, well, let's see, there's package, there's all these different things. But I was hoping to look for an interface, and it doesn't say it. Oh, but here it is. After you select the Java class, we can select interface, and then we can just say the name. Let's just call that Turbo for whatever reason, for lack of a better interface. So Turbo. And now we have this public interface Turbo, and what we can have is we can have a public void, so it doesn't return anything, and we can have start Turbo. And notice that this start Turbo method doesn't have a body to it, right? This is an abstract method. Why? Because we don't have the details about this implementation. And so what does that mean? What that means is now every class, like for example the Ferrari class, if I say implement Turbo, well, it has to implement, any class that it implements Turbo has to implement that method or those methods that are listed in Turbo. That's what the contract says. In fact, we get this red line here that says, hey, look, you have to, class Ferrari must either be declared abstract or implement abstract method start Turbo. And what we're going to do here is we're going to implement this method so that we can get rid of that. So one way we could do is we can manually do it, or we can see here in the IDE, in IntelliJ, we can click implement methods, and it's going to tell me which methods I need to go ahead and do, and I'll just click OK. And look at this, I get my start Turbo method right away. I get this override annotation, and we'll cover that later, but basically all this means is that this is a comment that means something specific in Java and to the IDE as well, which basically lets it know that denotes that this start Turbo method, it is an overridden method. Why? Because it's implemented from this one here. So what does that mean? Here we can just say it doesn't return anything, so we could just say something like system.out.println. Let's print something here that says starting the Turbo. Something like this. And that, my friends, is exactly what I wanted to show, that now we can go ahead and implement the start Turbo, and this is implementing this Turbo interface. Now, it gives our code more structure. We can organize our code and make sure that any class that implements this interface, it's going to have these methods. And so it's inheriting these methods, but as it stands right now, it's an abstract method. So the details about how it's going to implement the start Turbo, we don't know, but it better have the start Turbo, right? Because otherwise you're not going to be even able to run this. And so if we run this, by the way, we'll see that we can do this, and then we can run Turbo afterwards. And in here, for example, I could say system, we can just say Ed's Ferrari dot notation, start turbo, and we'll see that that text does get printed out. And that's what an interface is doing. It's allowing us to define, again, this contract where we can define some abstract methods and have the classes that implement that interface go ahead and have that concrete implementation of those methods. Now, in terms of hard, concrete implementations of this method here, we could, as of Java 8, we could have an implementation here that says, I don't know, return an integer, and here we're going to return return 2, something like this. Interface abstract methods cannot have body, make, start, turbo, default. We can have a default, that's what I was missing here. We can have a default method, and this is then a return 2, or I don't know, whatever the miles per hours are. We can multiply miles per hour times 2, and we could return miles per hour times 2, something like that. And by that, we know that when we invoke this in main, we can say start turbo, and well, we know that I don't know, it's going to be 600 times 2. Let's see what happens. Let's run this, and did not mean to do that. And Ferrari gets a little red squiggly line. Let's find out where. It's because method does not override method from its superclass. Why? Because this has to be passing something, and here it's passing. Oh, we don't have to pass anything actually, so we can make it the same, and we can just say this dot mph. Actually, it doesn't know what this is, so yeah, let's pass it in. Why not? Int mph, and then here we'll say int mph, and here when we say start turbo, it's going to return an int, and here we're going to return well, you know what, we don't even have to override it, I guess. So we don't even have to override it, because here we have, let's close this one, here we have the concrete implementation, so we don't even have to do this. And so I guess what we could do here is just say, let's just pass in mph here. So we say start turbo, let's just say, I don't know, 600, just for our example, 600, and let's go ahead and print this. System dot out dot println. Let's go ahead and print this and see what happens. And if we run this, we do get the 600 times 2, which is 1200. And so again, just to show that we could have a concrete, we can have a default here, right? We can have a default method within our interface. This is as of Java 8, and so you could do this in a combination with, you know, just anything else, any other method. And we could have something like that. It's just that if you have that here, you better have that here, because you're going to get a red squiggly line that says, hey, you got to implement this. Implement method. Which one? We want to implement this one. Go ahead and do that, and that's fine. Now we don't have any red squiggly lines. So I'm hoping this helps. Again, just demonstrating the whole concept of interfaces and how in Java we don't have multiple inheritance, but we can get around it. We can dance a little bit around it using interfaces, and we can implement more than one. So if you wanted to implement more than one interface, you could say turbo, and if we had another one that was called turbo 2, we could do something like that, comma, turbo 3. Of course, I don't have those defined, but just to show you what the syntax would be if we had more interfaces that we wanted to implement. You could just separate them by commas, and that would get you to that. I hope this helps.